On the last exciting episode of A Cast of the Past, one Ryan McNulty talked about his favorite games and movies from 2019 because people, it can't always be about the 90s and the early 2000s. So in this episode, it's my turn. It is Juan Velez's turn. Feels weird to talk about myself in third person, but I'm going to be talking about my favorite video game things because I think that 2019 for me was a video game heavy year, and you can check out a brand new episode of A Cast of the Past each and every Sunday with Keith Hamilton from London, Ontario. I know you weren't ready for that, were you, Keith?
I wasn't. You caught me totally off guard. I was going to make some joke about video games, but I have nothing right now.
What'd you think about Ryan's favorite stuff from the year?
There was a lot of things I wasn't expecting on there, and it left me with a few things to check out, especially in the movie department, because admittedly I was pretty light in the movie department in 2019, so I've got a list, I'll check it twice, I know he's naughty, and I'll be nice.
Wow. Now we got naughty Ryan McNulty from Boston, Massachusetts.
More like Ryan McNaughty, am I right, ladies?
Oh, yeah. Ryan, how do you feel about the fact that Keith has done a pretty good job at trying to pull away himself from WoW Classic, but then you've persuaded him to contemplate playing that?
You know, when it comes to Blizzard games,
yeah,
it's kind of like being in the Mafia. When you think you're out, they pull you back in. There's no escape.
Here's the thing. He's done a good job, but you could just say the word Strathome to me, and I would be like, "Yeah, I gotta play WoW Classic. Let's go raid it. What's Balthazar doing
Ryan,
these days?"
You didn't do all that much. You just kind of threw out a couple words.
No, all you have to do is just get the ball rolling, and it will snowball on its own. All of a sudden, he's watching a YouTube video about the top 10 classic dungeons or something, and then he's down the rabbit hole once again.
I may or may not have a tab of MMO Champion open right now.
Oh no, Keith, pull yourself away, man, because I'm gonna start with something that I know for a fact you're gonna talk about this next week, because I'm not going to have it be my number one because you're going to do a way better job of talking about this game than I am. But the Resident Evil 2 remake is the first thing I got to bring up because we've had a chance to review the original game. It's available in the archives. We talked about the PS1 game. But in addition to that, we did have a chance to lightly react to this one. And I'll be part of the bunch that when I saw it visually, I'm like, awesome, but it looked like it was going to be far too much of an action-oriented game. You look at the original game with its tank controls and everything, and all of a sudden, they changed it to an over-the-shoulder view, and you can understand, why people would be so concerned about it, but I think that, much like we talked about this back then, this is going to be the perfect example of, hey, you can remake a game and change the gameplay. Next year, we're going to have the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which at some point we're going to reference. And I think that this game, even though it's obviously made by different companies, etc., it laid to rest the fact that, no, you don't need to just have it be turn-based. You don't just have it need to be tank controls because the original one was. Because guess what? At the end of the day, if you want to play the original RE2 with tank controls, that's available on pretty much everything. It's even on the GameCube. People forget that version came out on the GameCube, right? But I think that it is so important to talk about that because I had such a blast, even though I was very much afraid. Horror games are not my thing. We've talked about Silent Hill 2 this year as well, and I needed to take off my headphones.
Let me say two words or one name, Mr. X.
Oh yeah, hell no, man. I streamed that game. I streamed RE2 the remake a couple of times. Literally, almost every time that he came up, I would pause the game and talk to the chat for a while, only to hide the fact that I'm like, man, because you don't know where he's going to come from. The fact that he can sneak into every room, right? If you're not careful, except the save rooms, it always lets you know, you can just be a second away from dying. And if he's in the room that you want to get to, then you got to think about, what are you going to do? And then in addition to that, the fact that you can choose, one of the two runs. I still haven't done my Leon run, which I really need to get to eventually, but it's the rare occurrence of a game that I bought day one and I beat it in about a month and a half, and at no point was I forcing myself to continue to beat the game, despite the fact that it's not even a genre that I play a lot. Ryan, I wanted to take it to you because you said around that point that you may be contemplating playing that game. Now that we're talking about like end of the year, games are dropping in price. I mean, I think I saw it on Black Friday for like $15 based on the original RE2. Are you thinking about possibly playing this one?
Definitely down the line. I wouldn't say I'm in a hurry. I kind of said before that I'm actually kind of more interested to check out Resident Evil 3 just because coming from the Silent Hill background, I kind of want me some tank controls and some old school gameplay because I really kind of dig.
For you, then.
Yeah, I kind of dig that style. I do want to check out the remake eventually, though. I think 2020 might be the year where I finally get a PS4, which I know is hilarious because
considering the PS5 will be out in November.
Yeah. But who cares? Or, I think down the line I may look into, one of the streaming gameplay services or whatever. So I'm sure it'll be available on something like that eventually. So I'd be happy to check it out. I would say I'm not in a rush, but I do want to play it.
And Keith, I know you're going to do a much better job of talking about this game next week, right?
I don't want to say too much, but I agree with everything Keith, you said.
Breathe deeply. It'll only take a week, okay? And then you can let it all out, baby.
Let's call this part 1.
Part 1 or part 1.
Yes.
Huh?
Or this is one. This is 1A, and then it's Keith B for the.
Ooh, okay.
I'm into that.
I like that. Okay, so number 2. So I love the Nintendo Switch. I think that this is the year that it definitely proved it has long-lasting legs. Now, I think that next year, 2020, the fact that we have Scarlet, the PS5 coming out, it is going to be very interesting to see how Nintendo really fares with that, right? Because instead of putting out a Switch Pro, they put out a smaller Switch and revised the one that came out this year with a better battery life. But if there's one thing that I love about the Switch is the fact that they are cartridge-based games. So I read an article 2 weeks ago that at first glance, it seemed to be very positive, but then when you actually read the words, it stated that the PS5 discs are so durable, they're going to last 50 years. At first glance, they're like, hey, that is awesome. 50 years. Wait a minute. What are you implying? If 50 years for a disc is good, what does that say about PS1, 2, 3, PS4 discs? I have a couple of games that have stopped working because the discs, they grow mold inside of them. You don't see that. They're not super obvious. So the fact of the matter is that in the Vita version, you see my video game collection. In 50 years, a lot of these games are not going to work. But when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, the N64, NES, Super Nintendo, etc., because they're cartridge-based, it means they're going to have long-lasting legs. And one thing that I love about the Switch, they're going to last pretty good. You can fix them up. Like, in comparison to discs, like I live in Puerto Rico, very humid weather, and it is not disc-friendly. But I know that some people complain about the limited run games or strictly limited games, all these exclusive things. The good thing about them is that they'll put out the games with the DLC pre-installed on the cartridge. So that means no day one download, no anything like that. They already announced that Battleborn, the game from the Borderlands people, that's going to be going offline in 2021. But the fact that I have games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. This is not a limited run game, but I love playing this game. And the fact that it's cartridge-based means that there's a higher probability that that game's going to be good, right? But then Rogue Legacy, this is one of my favorite indie games of all time. That's available on the Nintendo Switch. And that one, no patches. Because it's a limited run thing, they take their time to make sure that the game doesn't need any additional updates. And people, do you remember there used to be a time where you could put a disc inside of a console or a cartridge and it didn't need to do a day one download? Do you guys remember that?
I missed that a lot. I really missed that.
I try to remember it, but I was too busy flipping my PlayStation 1 upside down because that's the only way it would read a disc.
Like, how many times have you gone to a friend's house? It's a new game. You just want to pop it in and play it. And it's like, oh, we got to wait about an hour and a half before we can play because it's going to install this thing.
It's the worst feeling. It's last year, Red Dead 2, it happened to me where I got it day one. I was so excited to play Red Dead. Boom, came home. It had like a 2-hour install onto the PS4. And then you had to patch the game after the install, which was like another 2 hours. It's gotten out of hand.
Yeah, man. I was playing PS3 like 2 days ago as this recording session. I decided to pop in a little game called Metal Gear Solid 4.
The guns of the Patriots.
I played about 30 minutes of it, and it took me about an hour and a half to be able to do so. Because that game, it required you to download. You could either install the different acts that it had, or you could do it individually. But even then, it was like, wait time, 40 minutes. I'm like, 40 freaking minutes? Not to even download a patch. It is in the disc. It is installing it into a hard drive. So it's freaking insane. But yeah, the limited run stuff, the Nintendo Switch cartridges, I'm a fan of those. I know that it's still easier because it's portable, right? Like the digital route, I get it. And I do have a couple of digital games. But whenever I can, I definitely try to go physical because, like, look, I want to be able to own games 50 years from now and say like, hey, I spent money on that. You know, I don't want to chug out my 360 that has a couple of games there that I can't play on my Xbox One. And I paid my hard-earned money. I used that to buy those games. So I think that's kind of bullcrap.
Yeah, and I know we kind of had this discussion before about the whole physical versus digital games. So if you want to hear us talk more about that, there is an episode on the archives. But I'm very much on your side, Juan, where I try to get as many physical copies as I can. But you and I both know we're fighting a losing battle. Things are becoming more and more digital, and we just own less and less stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's sad. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens next year because it's pretty much happening, right? The whole digital transition, and I think it's only going to get worse and worse. Now, for an honorable mention, I do want to bring up a movie, pretty mainstream, so let's talk about Joker for a few minutes. It's an honorable mention because here's what I got to say about the movie. It is an incredible movie. It is not the best superhero movie, and it's not a great villain movie. So, taking it to the villain, when you think about Marvel, DC, you have the good guys, you have the bad guys. And I think that the problem with this movie is they made the bad guy to be so good because of trauma, because of everything he went through, that you can't help but feel bad for him, right? And I'm not saying that that's bad, but when I go to a superhero movie, I expect to want to go out and see and have me hate this person, right? I want to be able to punch him in the face. And the fact that I saw Joker and I'm like, look, he can kill somebody, but I'm just going to feel bad for him. Like, look at everything he went through. And I think that there is a limit that a company should go for. But I think that because, like, they have no intentions as of now, because money talks, but they don't seem to have any intentions of doing follow-up movies or, like, an entire trilogy based on this Joker. There were rumors a couple of weeks ago, but apparently those were not true. Like, I'm okay with it. But I think that when you remove the fact that this is DC, you know, Batman, Bruce Wayne, blah, 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 and you take this movie for what it is, I love the psychological thrill, right, that it had. The fact that it's not so much about mental health, although, like, obviously that is a main thing. It's just like, look, like, just overall, when people go through so much shit in their lives, some people break. And it's not justifying their actions. It's not saying like, look, like, haha, you know, he can get away with everything because he was bullied. But life isn't black or white. We obsess so much about people being good or people being bad that it's like, look, even the best person in the world, you know, can give all the money to charity. They're probably shitty at something in their lives. Like, you look at Keith Poshik, right? Keith is an excellent human being, but Keith, man, like, he's got to have some shady stuff in his life, but we love him for it. You know, what did you guys think about Joker?
That's not Keith Hamilton.
No. Yeah, that's not Keith Hamilton.
That
exactly.
Guy's an arse.
Yeah, that guy's gone. But
yeah, so
what did you think about that?
I saw Joker, and I did enjoy it very much. I see where you're coming from. I think what was really stupid with this movie was all the news articles and everything before it was coming out. That whole media circus was completely off about what this movie was actually about. because it really more touched on the failings of a society for not taking care of the less fortunate among us and what can happen. It was more kind of a commentary on how crime and, what, the consequences of ignoring those who are less fortunate, and I think it does a good job of that. It's not this whole thing that they tried, the media tried to make it into something and it wasn't. But on its own, I think it is a very interesting movie. Like you said, it is unfortunate that they aren't really going anywhere with this, because you get a really close look at a villain that you don't typically ever see, and then we don't get to see him face off against Batman, which is pretty disappointing in my opinion, especially considering that they involve the Wayne family in this movie. So they really tease it and then they're not going to deliver. But that aside, it was a phenomenal performance by Joaquin Phoenix, and I did find it very, I didn't find myself, I mean, you do sympathize with him, but it's not like I liked him based on his actions. It was more like shocking and just, yeah.
That's what I've heard kind of a lot about the movie. Yeah. Because I haven't seen Joker yet. It's something that I kept wanting to go to the theater and see, but just never got around to it. And a lot of people say it's just like
it's still in theaters, believe it or not.
Probably.
Yeah, at least in some.
Yeah, and a lot of people just say it's very shocking. Everybody I ask about it's like, well, you won't expect it, is what they pretty much say every time I ask about it. But I find it so interesting because even though this is a movie about the Joker, never once had I even considered that there would be a confrontation with Batman in it, just because of the way that it's framed, the way that it was kind of marketed, and then everything you hear about it. The thought of Batman being in it never even crossed my mind, so I can't even say I would be disappointed about that.
Yeah, and the reason that it's an honorable mention for me is that more so than the movie, the water cooler talk involved with it is just far more fascinating to me. Ryan, you brought up the whole newspaper articles. I mean, they were basically putting out this movie to be like, hey, we're condoning murder. Like that was the aspect that was built before the movie came out. But afterwards, then you have people that are all of a sudden mental health experts. Like I work in the mental health field on a personal level, and it's fascinating, to see everybody all of a sudden become an expert. Where it's like, look, there's a lot of bad people in the world, but they weren't necessarily built as bad people. They just went through a lot of shitty, miserable, horrible situations. And there is the whole adapt or perish mentality, right? Like some people ultimately adapt to the situation and become what they hate. And some people just don't, live a successful life. So that's why I thought it was worth pointing out. And I would love to get some feedback about this. Now that the honeymoon period of the movie has ended and the glorification of it, right? It's what do people think about it now? I would love to know that. And just like a quick tidbit, not even going to say disappointment or just like a thing that I'm looking forward to 2020 is video game streaming services. So on the disappointing side of things, I've just not agreed with the way that Google Stadia has worked. The fact that you have to pay a monthly fee, there's the Founders Pack.
In the video version, this is where we show a dumpster fire, because that's the Google Stadia.
Yeah, it's they promise 4K quality, 4K visual games, but they're not delivering that. They're outputting it 4K, without getting all technical. Basically, most people agree it's something that down the line, it absolutely makes sense because when it works, but you're paying for something that not only do you not own, it's not even in your home. And I think that Netflix, you're not paying for the service to then buy the movie, right? So I'm okay with the fact that I don't own, The Office on Netflix, but I can stream it.
But the big difference there is that if you go on Netflix and you want to watch The Office, you're not paying $60 just to watch The Office. And I think that's something that Stadia is getting wrong horribly, miserably. I love the idea of Stadia, but it's just unfortunate the way that they've rolled it out. And I'm with you, where I hope in 2020 the promise of streaming really gets there.
Yeah, and PlayStation now did drop their service, so now it's $10 a month, pretty much competes with Xbox Game Pass now. I can't talk too much about it, but on the flip side about this, and then I'll get to my number one, I have had a chance to play Project xCloud, which is Microsoft's offering for game streaming. So you can stream either from your phone to your console. Right now it's Android only, it's a game preview, or you can connect directly to their servers. And there you have a library of games, like Game Pass games are going to be available there. So right off the bat, the fact that like you don't have to buy every game individually, I don't see a scenario where unless Stadia adapts, like they are going to perish. And all I'm going to say is, in a span of 10 minutes, I went from I don't give a crap about video game streaming services to this is an actual viable option. Not for every video game genre, but the fact that I've been able to play a couple of games and I'm like, hey, it's fascinating. We had a couple of friends over, and the fact that I had a little stand so I could connect my Xbox controller to my phone, and I'm like, hey, what do you want to play from Xbox? And I could just hand them my phone, and they could not understand what was happening. Like, seeing that expression was fascinating, and it should only get better with like the PS5, Scarlet, and especially when fiber, internet becomes more widely available.
I'm definitely very curious about these streaming things. Like I said, I don't, aside from the Switch, I don't own any of the new consoles, so I'm kind of in the market for an option like this potentially. I know this kind of goes against the whole physical copy thing, but I'm also just trying to see what's a service in which I could play some of these titles I've just haven't been able to access.
It's fascinating, and I can't wait to see what happens next year. Now, as a transition, my number one has to be Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So
yes.
There's as somebody that in my personal channel, I talk about this, and people are still like not super clear about this. Keith and I love the service. So what it is that for $15 a month, you get Xbox Game Pass on your console, on PC, and it includes Xbox Live for your console. Unlike Cloud, unlike PlayStation Now, everything is downloaded. So you're not streaming anything. So it's like if you see Gears 5 on Xbox Game Pass, you download it, and it's the full game. Like, that's the way it works. So it's Netflix in terms of like delivery, but you do have to download everything. So the huge deal is like, look, games like Gears 5, you could get it day one, whether it be on PC, on console. The fact that my wife and I played Horde together, and it's like she's on her computer, I'm on my console. We don't have to pay. We didn't have to pay $60 a pop. We're just subscribed to Game Pass. That was mind blowing.
Amazing.
Yeah, the fact that Keith and I, for example, can have the same game on Game Pass, and if it's multiplayer, I don't have to ask Keith to buy the game. When you think about those little scenarios, that's where it becomes mind-blowing, because it's like, hey, if a new 4-player co-op game is going to be coming out next week, guess what? We can play it. On the PC side of things, it's still in preview as of this recording, but they do have an exclusive offering. One of the recent examples is, oddly enough, an older game from 1999, Age of Empires 2. They came out with a definitive edition. They redid everything from scratch, the graphics, the music, and the fact that it's a game that I was already going to buy. It's Age of Empires, one of my top 5, right? But it's like, I'm already subscribed to Game Pass. All I got to do is hit the download button. So I've been able to beat multiple games. I've been able to stream games, play games with friends, and extra live marathons. Like, this is awesome for that. The fact that a couple of days ago, somebody tweeted me like, hey, I bought the digital-only version of Xbox, the Xbox One S. I get Game Pass. It's like the fact that you can get a console, and right off the bat, as long as you have a good hard drive, you can download and get 20 to 30 games, if not more. It's just insanely mind-blowing.
To me, Game Pass is the future of video games. I'm saying this as of right now, with the new consoles being about a year away, where unless Sony gives me something that is comparable to Game Pass, I think that it is a strong enough thing that it is going to sway me over to the Xbox for the next console generation, just because of the promise of Game Pass is just so incredible. It's taking away, like, not every game is going to be on it. And like all of the third-party stuff, you'll probably never see it day and date, but Game Pass is perfect for those games that you look at and you're like, well, I want to try it, but I don't really want to spend money on it. Eventually, if you wait long enough, that game is going to be on Game Pass, and that is the perfect place for that to be. And some of the offerings that they have on there are incredible. It is more than worth the money, even if you just have a PC. Just the PC version of Game Pass at a discounted rate is worth the money.
It's like $5 right now, yeah, and it's going to be 10 later.
It's a great service. In my opinion, it's the future of video games. It's the thing that I wish Stadia had, and I think it's a huge missing piece. Like, yeah, I know they have that Stadia Pro, but it's just not there at the same level, and that's what I'm looking forward to the most in the future when it comes to video games.
Yeah, so something I wanted to just say for the podcast, even, I know, Ryan, you don't have access to an Xbox One, right?
I mean, I have access to one, but I don't own one.
Okay, but here's the amazing thing. The same way we've talked about Disney Plus, it's like, hey, the fact that if you want to review a series or a movie from that, we know that all our viewers and listeners can also check it out. We could do something like that with Game Pass, right? Imagine a scenario where, hey, 3 months down the line, we're going to review X game. The fact that you don't need to ask people to buy the game, the fact that the three of us don't need to contemplate buying the game, it's like, hey, if you're subscribed, you can play this game. We can talk about it on the Discord, acastofthepast.com/Discord, and then we can review it on the podcast. Like, I think this book club, game club mentality is accentuated with this because, once again, if you have a friend and they have Game Pass, you can play the same game or play 2 single-player games and talk about that.
There's no like fee for entry minus your subscription. Gears 5, like Juan mentioned, is a perfect example for that for me, where I love Gears of War. I would never go out and buy another Gears of War game. But because it's available in Game Pass, it was a day one download for me. Now I can play as Batista all I want.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And then for favorite podcast episodes, so Ryan brought up his last week talking about See No Evil. For me, much like Ryan, I think we went into this episode thinking that, oh, we're just going to make fun of it. But Spider-Man 3. So we reviewed the overall Spider-Man trilogy, the Tobey Maguire one. And I love the fact that, like, we started with, like, this positive mentality of, like, hey, the first one's pretty good. You know, people talk about the second one, but eventually we're going to get to the third one.
But then there's 3.
And even then, the fact that the three of us, we've witnessed this evolution, right? And I'll never forget that part where I'm writing to Ryan, like, I don't hate this movie yet, Spider-Man 3. And then he was like, just wait for it. The fact that we're able to, like, have that live reaction of the entire trilogy, and it's easy to look at the last movie and only make fun of it. But we had, like, a solid conversation of the first hour of the movie of, like, look, the first hour is objectively maybe the best Spider-Man movie. Now, afterwards, it's freaking horrible, and you should not watch it.
I've never seen a movie fall apart so fast, but my God, does it do it.
It's like an accident on I-90.
Yeah, like See No Evil, for example, like, that was just bad, right? Like, at no point I'm like, oh man, the cinematography, oh, that acting, right? It's like the Spider-Man trilogy, especially with 3, you can pick and choose some actually good things about it. And I think that for podcast discussion was fun for me, right? Because it's not just like, well, I'm just going to crap on this. It gets old after a while. And even the worst movie, except See No Evil, has some kind of redeeming quality, right?
I don't know. You've seen that end credit scene for See No Evil. I'd call it redeeming.
Yeah, Spider-Man 3 was definitely fascinating, like you said, just because it starts out so good and then you see things just fall apart. And of course, how could we forget the most amazing moment of that film, of just when Harry has the pie, right? I mean, that was just...
It was so the birth of James Franco.
Yep, that was the most James Franco-esque thing I've seen in the entire trilogy. But I'm really happy we've had a chance to do this podcast. Like, I think that overall, 2019, realistically for me, was not a year to play and watch a lot of things from this year. I focused mainly on Wii U, PS3 games, like retro-style games on the Switch. So next year is going to be that dramatic shift, right? Because earlier in the year, you have Final Fantasy VII Remake. At the end of the year, you have PS5 and Scarlet. So it's like, in some form, there's going to be something new that you have to experience, right? Like in the middle of the year, you have E3, which is only going to bring up more stuff.
We forget Animal Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Animal Crossing,
Animal Crossing.
The Last of Us 2, which I'm just going to say now, it's one of the games that I kind of hope we review at some point. That's going to be coming out in May. Like, I haven't beaten the first game, but it's like those little things that 2020 can be, I don't know about for movies and series, but for games, man, it's going to be a really powerful year.
I got some ideas. I got some thoughts. We should talk about it.
I'm afraid. But Ryan called us out last time for bringing them up on the podcast. So, Ryan, all I'm going to say is give us a shout out. Where can people find you on social media, and what makes you smile?
People can find us on social media at A Cast to the Past, whether it's youtube.com/acasttothepast or twitter.com/acasttothepast. What makes me smile? That's a good question. I'm struggling.
Keith, I'm concerned.
I know.
Ryan cannot name something that makes him smile.
We're in December. It's snowing. It's hard. It's tough to smile when you have to shovel your car out of the snow in the morning. All right.
Tell me about it.
I gotta shovel the rain. Man.
You shovel
rain? I hope that mosquito bites you.
Oh man, it takes some skill. That's all I'm saying.
That's maybe the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Can somebody make an actual like animated picture or something of me shoveling rain? I really want to see that. But up until next time, next week, oh man, next week it's gonna get dark. It's gonna get cold-hearted because
we're gonna have some fun next week.
Oh boy, Ryan, rest. We're gonna need the energy.
We gotta buckle up for this one.
Another exciting
I feel like
episode.
I'm gonna disappoint with all of this anticipation, but I won't.
Keith, like this has been the definition of our 15-year friendship, though.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about my 3 favorite things of 2019 to really summarize our friendship.
On A Cast
to the
Past.
Love you guys.
Oh, I guess I love you too.